Hello everyone, this is Dr. Victoria Skirbo speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. And as I promised this morning when I did my astrology, I wanted to look at Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. And Boris Johnson was actually born in America. His father, I guess, was a professor, I think, at Columbia. So he was actually born in New York City. And his name is not Boris, it's actually Alexander. Boris is one of his names. And I thought I would do this kind of blind. I have a little information about him, but I don't know that much. And thank you, Elizabeth. I'm going to take a look at that video that you sent me. I kind of want to do this without really knowing anything about him, and as kind of an experiment. And luckily, not only do we have his numerology, we also have his chart because we have an accurate birth time, Rodin rated A for the astrologers out there. So let's look at his name. And as we look, every time when we look at somebody's name, we know that this is the energy that they come in on. This is what they are, they need to stay in good relationship with. This is their past experiences, their talents, their abilities, and such. And so his full name is Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson. And if we take out his vowels and add them all up, we come up with a 54-9 vibration. I don't know if you can actually see that. And then we add up his consonants, we get a 91, but I only add up to 78 because I connect it with the tarot cards. And so I reduce that to a 10. And so his outer personality or his quiescent is a 10-1. If we add his soul, the 54-9, to the 91 of his quiescent, we get 145. And we add the 1 and 4 as 14 plus 5 is 19, and we get a 19-1 as his expression. So he has a 9 soul and a 1 quiescent and a 1 expression. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's look at his soul vibration, the 54-9. Now, the 54-9 on the Tree of Life is located here in Malkuth. And so he has his soul here in Malkuth. It's connected to the root chakra. And 9 is the number of understanding. It's the number of unconditional love. It is the number of the teacher and the philosopher. And I know that he is a brilliant, brilliant man. Okay? Now, the 54-9 vibration is associated with this card right here. Okay, we have the Page of Swords. And swords are always indicative of mental. Okay, there's the mental quality to the swords. And this is associated with the sign of Gemini. Actually the last decan of Gemini. And so, because we're in Malkuth, Malkuth is associated with the last decan of the mutable signs. And if we look at this card as maybe a story we can say about his soul, this is we could say maybe this is a young soul, okay, because we're dealing with the prince here, and he's holding the sword, but he's not really that sure of himself, and he has 1 foot on the ground and 1 foot off the ground, and so there is this sense of not being particularly sure-footed when it comes to this card. Now, he is a Gemini, and he does have his sun, and he has his sun and his Venus in the last decan of Gemini. He has a sun at 28-27 degrees of Gemini, and his Venus is at 45 degrees of Gemini retrograde. So he has a Venus retrograde in his chart. And this is his chart, and we'll go over his chart maybe in this video, maybe separately, depends on how long this video goes. And we can see his sun up here in the ninth house next to his Venus. He also has Mercury in Gemini, a little bit over here. While his Venus is retrograde, his Mercury is direct. He also has his North Node right next to his Venus and his Sun, but his North Node is in Cancer. His North Node is actually at 2 degrees of Cancer, 5 minutes. And so he's actually going to be having a nodal return. Is it the end of this year or the beginning? No, next year, the middle of next year, right before the nodes shift into the next signs. All right, so let's talk about, so this Gemini vibration. Now, one of the things when you have a 54-9 vibration is that there needs to be continuity between the inside and the outside. And so if he's feeling good on the inside, he needs to express that. If he's feeling bad on the inside, he needs to express that. You need to be authentic with yourself, inside and outside, with this vibration. Because if you don't, you can split. Now, he has a lot of duality in his chart, and this is a vibration of duality. The duality comes through his Gemini planets, but he also has a number of very precise and tight oppositions in his chart. And so it's as if he's always arguing with himself, okay? And I know that he's changed his position. I think he started as liberal and then he became conservative. Not that unlike Donald Trump, who was originally liberal, had liberal leanings, and then he went into the conservative place. Now, whether Donald Trump really had anything but opportunism when it came to whether he was liberal or conservative is another question. But I think that Boris is really does struggle with those two parts of himself. Okay, so if we look at his quiescent vibration, we get a 10-1 vibration, and the 10-1 is the Wheel of Fortune. And the quiescent is what you're good at. And so with the Wheel of Fortune, this is a vibration where it's very important to stay in the center of things. And he might actually be good at this. I don't know, because I don't know that much about him. But it's important that he stays in the center as he watches things around him change. When you're on the Wheel of Fortune, it's better to be in the middle than to be on the edges, because when you're on the edges, that's when the centrifugal force can sort of throw you off. But this is this particular card is associated with the sign, with the planet Jupiter, okay? And he does have a challenge when it comes to his Jupiter, and we'll see that in his numbers. I'll talk about it. So depending on how healthy he is within himself and how well he is at healing his wound will depend, I think, on how this expresses itself in his life. Okay, so when we add this all together, we get the expression vibration, and the expression vibration is how he finds his balance, and his expression is actually the sun vibration. And the sun is about taking a 180-degree turn from the direction that you were. So there's an oppositional energy about the sun as well. The 1 is, the 19-1 is what we consider in numerology a karmic number. It's as if you came in to do this. You agreed before time that you were going to come in and experience this. Now, this is a card of illumination. And so if he can find the balance between the inner and outer self, he can actually have, he can illuminate something to us, but he can also have a rebirth, because this is the card of rebirth. Okay, so those are the vibrations of his inner and outer self. So we have the inner sort of Gemini dual nature. The inside and the outside has to be the same. Philosophical, 9 denotes being philosophical. It almost didn't come out. But 9 is also the number of humanity. And this is somebody who understands or hopefully understands humanity from its highest highest highs to its lowest denominator, as it were. And he needs to practice forgiveness, okay? Forgiveness for self, forgiveness for others, to stay in good relationship with himself and to stay unified within himself. The nine can be a criminal as well. The nine can be like the lowest of the low. How we have free will. We get to express the numbers the way we choose to express them. We can't get away from our numbers, but we get to pick on what side of the fence, I guess, we're going to express those numbers. Okay. Now let's look at his path of life. Now his path of life is interesting. If we add his birthday is 6/19/1964. What's interesting is it's the opposite of Trump. Trump is 1946, so he's sort of like a mirror image to a certain extent, just in that respect, okay? This man is a whole lot smarter than Trump. Trump has good instincts, I think, and knows how to create havoc. If this guy is creating havoc, it's because he can't decide within himself what he believes, okay? We have his path of life is a 45/9, and the 45/9 is this card right here. It's the Five of Cups. And so part of his life, he will have sadness. He will have a certain amount of grief. There are things that he has lost that will be painful for him. But he always needs to remember that he has to see what else is left, what else is there. Now, this card is located on the Tree of Life in a place called Gabura. Okay, Gabura is this red Sephiroth here, this red circle, connected with Mars. And it's a place of adjustment. Gabura is a place of adjustment. And in the case of the Five of Cups, it's making adjustments in our emotional nature. So he is learning how to work with his feelings. This guy is somebody who's very smart, very brilliant. The soul is in Gemini, and yet part of the challenge is to feel. And his North Node is in Cancer, and so he's maybe not all that good at feeling. South Node in Capricorn, there's a lot of repression there. Okay, so part of his journey is to learn how to feel. And what's interesting about him is that in his chart, he has a yod formation, and the focal point of that yod is actually his Mars. Okay, he has Mars as a focal point, and he has Mars in Gemini. And Mars in Gemini is a challenging position for Mars. There's a lot of mental energy, but there tends to be a scattering. There tends to be a doing two things at once. There can be an issue with focus. And so these can be some of the issues that we see him have as he becomes prime minister. I know that he sort of was one of the leading thought provokers of Brexit to leave. But there's one thing about the thought, and then there's a whole nother thing about taking that thought and applying it in such a way that you can create something of worth, or something that works, okay? And that will be his challenge. Now, so let's look at his shadow, because this tells a lot about him as well. You get your shadow. This is his place of healing. This is what he's come in to heal in this lifetime. And his shadow vibration is a 58/4. We get that by adding his name Alexander, which vibrates to a 39, to his birth date, the 19, and we get a 58/4. And the 58/4 on the Tree of Life is here in this circle, this blue circle called Hesed. And it is associated with Jupiter. And that's why I said he does have an issue with Jupiter. So this is his woundedness. Now, having a wound in Hesed has to do with going too far. Okay, Hesed is Jupiter. Jupiter is expansion. maybe too far. Now, it's interesting that in his chart, it's so interesting how it all lines up. In his chart, he has Jupiter in Taurus, which you would say, oh, Jupiter in Taurus, that should be very good, right? Very, Taurus is very stable, except that it's exactly opposite Neptune. And when you have Jupiter opposite Neptune, you can have these sort of utopian dreams, right? Utopian dreams that cannot manifest themselves. You can also lie to yourself. Neptune is always challenging with that energy, and so it's possible that he thinks he believes something, but he's actually. I think it's especially prominent in him, but I think all of us, if we believe it, we tend to sometimes talk ourselves into it because it's our belief. And beliefs and facts aren't always like the same vibe, right? So, all right. Now this particular card is this one right here. This is the 58/4. This is associated with people who feel like they have been, what's the word? Kicked out. Like there's a sense of alienation with this card. There's a sense of not fitting in with this card. There's a sense of kind of a man without a country feeling. And what's interesting and a little bit frightening, actually, is that in his, this is his divine triangle, okay? This is his youth square. This is his first 27 years of life. This is his power square, his second 27 years of life, of which he is right here. He just turned 45, so he just turned the corner. His last 9 years, he was in a 1 vibration, and a 1 vibration is like a singleness of thought. Okay, it's like a thought. It's like what you concentrate on. Now he's going into a 14/5 vibration, and the 14/5 vibration is associated with Temperance card. Okay, walking the straight and narrow. And so he's going to have to find balance. He's going to have to find his way to balance. The Temperance card is also located here on the Tree of Life, connecting the lower self with the higher self. So this next 9 years for him is an opportunity for him to have a spiritual awakening and a spiritual initiation. Of course, not everybody succeeds in that, and that sounds great. Oh, an awakening. But generally, they're challenging. Otherwise, why would you wake up? Something was making you wake up, right? So there's always this challenge with that 14/5. But he is in a 58/4. His power square is his shadow. And so if he heals his shadow, then something good can come of it. But if he doesn't recognize that it is a shadow for him, his power can be based on his wound. And when your power is based on your wound, just as Trump's power in a way is based on his wound, he has a 1 wound, his inability to have any thought but of himself and any sense of empathy is the wound of the 1, okay? The 1, the vibration of 1. And so he sort of utilizes that power like a club. Now, I'm not saying that Boris is using his wound as for his power, right? It's the negative expression. I don't know that much about him, but this is something that he is going to have to come to terms with, and he has an opportunity to heal it. Now, whether an opportunity to heal it means that he's going to stay prime minister is another question, because sometimes you need to move away from that in order to heal. But he has this sense of not belonging anywhere. He feels a little bit like an alien. And let me just see if there's anything in his chart that would indicate that. Interestingly enough, he does not have any Aquarius placements. Aquarius often, when you have placements in Aquarius, you do feel like an outsider. But he does have Uranus in his 11th house, and it's in Virgo. His Uranus is almost exactly opposite his Saturn, and that was because he was born in 64. That was when Saturn was opposite Uranus and Pluto. Uranus and Pluto in Virgo and Saturn in Pisces. And so Saturn is the structure of things in Pisces. In part, he is here to dissolve the structure. And then the opposition to Uranus will bring in a sense of waking up the common folk. So this could be his, what is that called? His populace. This is his populace message. However, with this combination, with this combination of, where is it? I can't see it, so I have to. Okay, here we go. Here's his Uranus, and here's his Saturn, and then he has Pluto conjunct Uranus, like all people do born in 64. And it is a balsamic phase conjunction. There can be mental instability and emotional instability with this, and we know that he's trying to figure out and learn about his emotions in this lifetime. And his he has his North Node, as I said, in Cancer. His the ruler of his North Node is his Moon in Scorpio, and a Moon in Scorpio is a deep feeling moon, but it's about processing, and it's about uncovering the depths when you have Scorpio. But it's just in Scorpio, just moved into Scorpio, so he probably doesn't have that much experience. If you had it like at 15 degrees of Scorpio or later degrees of Scorpio, we know that you sort of experienced the gamut of Scorpio. But having it at 1 degree means that you're just sort of starting that energy. Okay. And then his wisdom square is it's actually an 11 vibration Netzach, and this is let me see if I can find my cards. I wish I had pulled it out and I didn't. This particular card is the excuse me a second. I'm going to see if I can find my cards. I have everything right. Yes, here we go. His wisdom square is actually the Seven of Cups. And the Seven of Cups is the cups of delusion and illusion. And I'll pull it up so you can see it. You know this card. So, God willing, he makes it into his wisdom years. He's going to have a lot to ponder about what was real and what was not real, and the wisdom that he gains from that. And here we go. This is his wisdom. Okay. So we have somebody here who's very, I would say very intelligent, but might have some issues emotionally. And because he's learning his emotions, it's hard when you're very smart and you're trying to figure out your feelings through your mental body. It's like it doesn't really work that way. And his feelings are deep, and his feelings can be dark, and with the Scorpio moon. And so he does have access to them, but how they're going to manifest is very interesting. As I said, he has a lot of tight oppositions. He has a Yod to Mars. And his Mars, as a Yod coming from his South Node and his Ceres in Capricorn. He has Ceres in Capricorn, and he has the Moon in Scorpio. I don't know what his relationship with his mother was like, but those two energies together can be very challenging. There's depth, there's feeling there, but there's also repression. And that is making the Yod to his Mars and in Gemini. And so the engine that's running his Mars is one full of deeper, darker emotions and a past of being repressed, of repressing the emotions. And so it will be interesting to see how he manifests this as he moves through his should I say reign. So as I said, I don't know that much about Boris, but this is going to be challenging for him, I think, and he is going to have to do things, and it's less about, like, if he wants to be successful, it's going to be less about ideas and more about doing the work of governance. And quite frankly, his chart and this don't really indicate that. And so yeah, let's see, what else do I want to say? Oh, yeah, so his shadow is in Hesed right here, and his path of life is in Gebura, which is on the opposite side. But this whole area of energy is his throat chakra. And so he's learning how to speak with his path or lesson in Gebura and Mars, so energy and his voice. The 45-9 can be very bitter. The 45-9 can be very angry. There can be a lot of rage, and he has to learn how to work with that. And but the I guess the good thing for us, and maybe the bad thing for him, is that Kabur is a place of instant karma, and so you don't get away with a lot. He actually has no karmic numbers because he has such a long name. He has all the vibrations in his name, but his path of life is in a very karmic place. So any action he takes, Mars, any way he expresses himself, being that both his path of life and his shadow is in his throat chakra, is going to impact people. It's going to impact people. And so he has to be very careful about what he says. And his shadow in Hesed, associated with Jupiter, is somebody who can promise too much. Promise too much, and there's nothing there. 4 is about foundation, but if it's a shadow, it's very possible that you have no foundation, that you don't know how to build a foundation. And I feel like there's a transitory nature to him. There's a sense of not being able to put your feet on the ground with him, and that is seen in his numbers as well. So I hope, for the sake of England, that you have a better shot at him than we have had it with Trump. So, but we're all here learning together, right? And he also, it's interesting that we have now in charge 2 Geminis, and Gemini being the sign associated with duality and like duality, black and white, right? And contrast and separation. Right? Gemini is about separating things out. And so maybe we have to see things that way before we can sort of come back together in a better way, and realize that those differences really aren't differences. They're just different sides of a paradigm, or different sides of a continuous line. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Like and subscribe, comment below. If you have any questions or anybody else you'd like me to look at, I'd be happy to do that. Have yourself a great day. Good luck, England. I think you might need it. Take care.